Take us away.
Hello and welcome to Glitch Point. So we both ended up playing the same game, so I think that's where we will start.
Yeah.
Um, it's a game called Carrion. Is that right? Did I say it right? Carrion?
Carry on, something. Yeah.
Carrion. Um, and we both think it's fantastic. I mean, it's so different for a platforming game
Yeah.
than anything else I've ever played, and I just feel like I don't get that a lot anymore. Where, especially in the platforming genre, where there's just such a difference. Because, and Spencer doesn't actually know this, but I also went because I never played Ori, so I never played the first Ori. I don't know which one you're playing.
I'm playing the first one right now.
Yeah, I never played the first one, so I actually went and started to play that when you said you were playing it because I just wanted to
Oh,
make sure
nice.
we were on relevant data. Um, and the difference between the two games is just vast. I mean, like the Ori really feels like the traditional Metroidvania,
Oh yeah, for
very
sure.
very polished, very beautiful. Where Carrion is very gritty, but what it does is it does so amazing is the movement. It's just
Oh my God, yes.
intoxicating. Like to
Yeah,
be
it
able
is
to cross a
phenomenal.
map in like seconds or like get around. I don't know. I never felt in that game at one point that I was hindered because I was too far away from somewhere.
No, and one thing that I noticed was like it doesn't tell you where to go almost ever. There's one thing that kind of helps you find where different save points are, but the game doesn't tell you where to go. So sometimes, especially if you put the game down and come back hours later, like what the hell was I doing? But you move so quickly and so fluid that it doesn't matter. It doesn't tell you because you can just like quickly and rapidly go through the entire current level map and just figure it out again. And it's just so satisfying.
Well, and it's intuitive. For some reason, I didn't feel like I ever got lost. I don't know because
No.
yeah, you move so fast, and like once you were in areas, you kind of felt like that was where you were supposed to be, and I don't know. I thought that like because without really telling you where to go, I thought I was going to get lost a lot, but I never got lost. I always felt
Yeah,
like I was going.
I think like I would say I would get lost, but I didn't feel lost because I was going through so many rooms at a time, and then I would eventually just end up like I kind of randomly just get to the point where I needed to go, and it just felt like I just took the right route, but there was probably like a 2 room route to get there.
Yeah,
Um,
because usually what happened was there was a central hub that connected to multiple pathways that were like sub areas that you would have to complete, and then once you complete those sub areas, it unlocks part of the door.
yeah. Oh, actually, hold on. Before we get too into Carrion, so for those who don't know what the hell this game is, because it did just come out.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know.
so they described it as a reverse horror game, which is like I've never heard of a game like this before. And you play as this like swarm red monster biomass thing, and you just float through. Well, not really float, but you kind of have these tendrils that you can grab onto literally any part of the map, and it's a 2D platformer, so it's just like navigating on a 2D plane. And the whole point of the game is to pretty much escape the facility that you're breaking out of, and then throughout the game you can gain biomass by eating people, and then the bigger you get, the more abilities you get, and then throughout when you go throughout the world, you get more abilities and stuff like that. But you just kind of you move like you're kind of almost like you're fluid, but you're definitely just biomass and moving through the world, and it's phenomenal. It's hard to describe it if you just look up like a quick like 30-second clip of people moving in the game. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it looks good too. I mean, the animation that they did, where every like your tendrils are connecting
Oh,
to everything, like as you're moving through, so it actually looks like you're propelling yourself with your tentacles.
yeah,
You
and
know, I
the
just
sound effects are amazing for that too.
yeah, it's pretty like, and I can see the underlying tech of it too as well. And I was trying to figure it out because, like when you at the title screen, the little mouth thing follows your mouse. Did you ever just like play around with that?
So I was playing on Xbox, so I don't think there was any
Oh,
menu
okay.
interaction. Yeah. So you played on PC?
Yeah, I played it on PC,
Okay.
which I don't think it would matter much either way
No.
because the movement would be about the same. I mean, for it really felt like I don't know what other kind of games do that where you use the mouse to direct. I guess Hotline Miami would be a good example where it's like you kind of put the mouse where you're shooting.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
like you just do that and then you move in, and like that's where your tendril goes. It goes in that direction. So it wouldn't. I don't think it would matter if it was. It actually might play better with joysticks.
So I was playing on controller, and there were a couple times where I felt like, yeah, you move the right joystick to aim, so it's just like a twin stick shooter
Yeah.
control scheme. Sometimes I felt like it wasn't necessarily inaccurate, but it was a little. Sometimes I needed to slow down and take my time to make it just right to like use my tendril for like switches and stuff. But most of the time it felt pretty good. But I could imagine on PC it must have felt pretty damn good.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. I mean, like it was really easy to grab like the guys above you if you were like underneath them. Like if there was like not necessarily a platform, but some sort of I guess level
Yeah.
that you were underneath, and then you could kind of like move your tendril around the side to grab them if so it helped. Um, but yeah, that's the other part of that game that made the game was the enemies. It's just they were so much fun, and like you can also take possession of enemies, and once that mechanics became part of the game, it was amazing. The only thing I didn't like was those like levels where you had to be the human and walking around. I mean, it's not that I didn't like them. I just felt like they were a little pointless. I didn't really understand why they were there.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting at first, but I think that just the game, it was so fun to play as the freaking monster that you
Yeah.
didn't want to stop, and it never got boring or old the entire time. So yeah, that like I mean maybe it was a nice pace breaker, but I didn't feel like I needed to slow down, and I just wanted to keep going fast. So yeah, it definitely was a little weird feeling, but they were neat, I guess.
I mean, it kind of plays as a tutorial about how to navigate as a human. So when you take possession,
Oh,
uh,
that's a good point. Yeah.
yeah, you kind of get that feel for it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just this game was so good. And when you get to the end, you see like it's very few developers. It feels like two guys did the whole game through the credits. And I don't know. The one of the things I want to talk about is it just didn't get a very good score on Metacritic, which of course we shouldn't be following our opinions on Metacritic. I'm trying to figure it out, like because we both I think really really enjoyed this game, and it pulled. Let me see what it pulled. It pulled a 76 and then a 7.9 from users, 76 from critics. Um, I mean, maybe it's just the time that we're in. I feel like dark games are just getting the shit kicked out of them. Like, oh, it's the pandemic, It's like that game's too dark. I don't want to like I don't want to play it.
Yeah, and I mean 70, 76 and 7.9, that those aren't bad scores, but I definitely would. I mean, again, numbers are just numbers, but I definitely would put it up there. I mean, the game is short, but I don't
It
think
is
that
short.
should be. I don't think that a game's length shouldn't really determine its score because
Well,
it might
Portal.
be a 4 hour camp or a 4 hour experience, but it was like a damn good 4 hours.
Yeah.
Um,
I thought it was a perfect length too. I think it made you hungry for more. And when they drop a sequel, I
oh,
think a lot of people agree.
please.
It felt really good, like Portal. Like that's the thing when I think of short games. It was kind of that length where you had so much fun that it was just perfect.
Yeah,
You
and
know.
the thing that really stood out to me is why I loved it so much was the difficulty and how it treated difficulty. Because at first, it's all about just moving really fast and going around and learning how to navigate as the monster. So, and it's cool because this is supposed to be like an outbreak in like a movie or something. So at the
Yeah.
beginning, no one knows what's going on, and you're just rapidly going fast. And spreading your biomass everywhere. And then eventually, like the humans start to realize, okay, we need to slow this thing down. And it feels like the humans not necessarily get smarter, but like the placement of them and the types get really more difficult. So it feels like they're actually learning how to take you down. And then after the game goes on, you start dying more. And then the fuck the fire. That
Yeah. I love the
Holy
fire.
shit, it's a cool idea, and
It's
it feels
so
so
awesome.
cool to like instantly get set on fire and like panic, try to go through room after room to find water. But man, that's fucked me up so many times. Holy shit.
Yeah, I thought that was like there were more times where I end up because also when you lose life, you can reduce to a lower level of biomass. So, and
Yes.
it just, what it makes you feel like when you're like you have last bit of life and you're just a small little piece of biomass and you're just trying to escape and you're like going any way you can to get away.
You're just
And-
begging to find that one guy to eat his head off and legs and just grow. It's so good feeling.
yeah, it is. They really did a good job. I don't know if you've gotten to the point like it's hard to say, but you're pretty far. You said you're.
I'm pretty far. I just haven't beat it, so I
So
don't
you've
really
gotten to
care to
like
talk.
where you possess, and then you're able to also take over the tank, basically things. Have you done that?
No, I haven't possessed a guy yet, so maybe I'm not as far as I thought.
Oh, yeah. Possession is like, I think Possession was my favorite.
That's, I mean,
Um,
you said it and it sounds amazing, and I'm super excited to do it.
yeah. That's the one thing that I felt about the game is it never got stale because it always added something new, like I felt like I was always, and I love the each different biomass level, we could call them. There's 3 levels. You do reduce in biomass within those levels visually.
Yeah.
But there are, once you're in a level of biomass, you have certain abilities that are tied to that level of biomass, which is a really cool thing because you can like deposit it and like you can go up and down between your biomass levels, um, which is how I think they made it interesting because they were able to force you into a lower level, like a health state. So it was a
Yeah.
little bit harder, more frantic, and you had to deal with certain things. Um, but yeah, possession is really cool, and like that's I guess that was late in the game, but it just becomes really interesting. Like they kept it fresh. Like I thought before that, I was like, oh, I kind of seen everything, but then when they added that, I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I like that whole depositing biomass thing because it does like it allows the designers to kind of decide how difficult a part can be, but also there's a couple times where they let you deposit, but you don't have to, so you can kind of take on an encounter however you want. If you want to be the big ass biomass and just run through and destroy all of them, that's great. Or you could like turn on your stealth and kind of stealth past them with like a little bit of a side route or maybe like a ventilation shaft from the top that you found.
yeah.
It was just so satisfying every part of this game.
Do you have all 3 biomass levels?
No, I think
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I'm really close to getting the third one though.
Yeah.
Like I'm
So
about to.
the third one is so ridiculous. Like it's so OP, but that's so like once you get the third one, it's like it all becomes them trying to keep you from being the third one all the time.
That's
Cuz cuz it's ridiculous. It's like you could literally take out everyone in a room. You'll see. It's and I like that actually because when you're able to be the third one, you just plow through stuff and you're just like unstoppable force. Um yeah, it's really cool.
nice.
It's yeah, they did a really good job. I just feel like they should get more credit, and I don't know, like I don't feel like a lot of people are going to play this game. Um, and I actually looked at the other game that came out recently, which I played is Fall Guys, which also
That's
didn't get a
taking
great.
the internet by storm.
It didn't get a great score, but maybe that also got a 79 and a 7.4. I know Metacritic's not the only thing, but it is a conglomeration of different review
Well,
sites. So
Well, there was some review bombing going on with Fall Guys at launch because of server issues, which I think
oh
was
really?
bullshit. Because, I mean, again, every online game is always going to have server issues day one. It's just how the world works. So I don't think that they should have been review bombed for that in any way. But I've been hearing amazing things, and I've been meaning to grab it and
It's
play
a
it.
really, I mean, it's definitely a fun time. I wish there was couch co-op for it because I think it deserves that. But it definitely is fun to just be able to connect with your friends and stuff, and it's basically like a battle royale style, but fun platformer. But every time you finish, um, it's almost like Mario Party, but just the games. And then every time you survive, more and more people get knocked off who didn't survive that level. So then you have the last few, and that's where the battle royale part comes in.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's gotten a lot more play and a lot more notoriety around the community, and it's just maybe that's what it is to be an indie game this day. Is like, who's streaming you? Are you going to get a lot of streamers playing your game? And maybe that's always going to be in the way, but it's like a game like this just doesn't get
I
streamed, I guess.
No,
Or I
yeah, I think that streaming platforms is like not mainly the number one, but it's definitely the like a really high up there when it comes to how big a game is going to be. And I think we saw that with I think that kind of started with battle royales and like Fortnite, the games that were just so great at being streamed. Because we saw that when Apex Legends came out, it was a fun game, but it was pretty noticeable that EA was paying a lot of people to play the game and
yeah
get that hype around it, and then the game did feel like it died when those paid promotions went off.
yeah
Um, and yeah, this game really does not lend itself to a stream. Well, kind of. I mean, it's a 4-hour campaign, so like you could probably push that out in like 1 or 2 streams, but
yeah, but you're not going to be playing like that's the other thing. It's not going to be continually being streamed by the same person. Like Fall Guys, you could play that 6 days in a row or something.
yeah.
And so like it'll get a lot more play, and I don't know. I just want to see games like this because they're really good and creative or whatever, original. And I just feel like it's not going to get very much play, and and games like this are not going to make as much money,
Yeah,
Uh,
and
party
I
games.
yeah, it's kind of tough because like yeah, I want more people to play this game, and I don't know how much it costs to make. So I would love to know. Oh well, it's been published by Devolver Digital, which
Yeah,
is that's funny because that's the guys who published Fall Guys as well. So I mean they're a great publisher from their history and the games that they make. It seems like that they allow a lot of great creators to make just the games that they want to make, and I think this is a great example of maybe it's not going to sell well or commercially isn't as viable, but like yeah, I think the best way to describe this game is just a breath of fresh air,
yeah.
especially for the 2D platform genre. It's just like the second I started playing it, and I think because I saw it come out, I think it came out about 2 weeks ago, and it looked, I mean, it had a similar like 32-bit type of art style that tons of other games have. So at first glance, it doesn't seem like it's anything more than just another one of those 2D platformers. But when you mentioned playing it, I was like, oh, I'll give it a try. And oh my god, within 30 seconds, I'm like, oh my god, this game is something else. And the entire time, it's just so refreshing to play a game that you've never played something like it before.
Yeah, and it's got I love the humor of it. Like that's the other thing. And you notice this in the credits, like it goes all the way to the credits about who the developers are. I'll just ruin stuff for you because it's really funny. So like in the credits they have like first off, the whatever this I can't pronounce his name. Sebastian Carrasco. He basically did everything. He's like the director, lead programmer, designer, artist.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's like basically there's this other guy that did a lot as well, but I can't say his name. So Krzysztof. Yeah, so Russian, I think, something along Ukrainian. But yeah, they have like one of my favorites from the credits is pointless business meetings, and they said Fork Parker is the guy. So they contributed to that. They have like lead idea guy and idea guys.
Oh hell yeah.
And I was like, that's amazing. And that's how the whole game feels like when you're killing the um all the lab people, the researchers. It's just kind of funny, it's like cuz they're running for their lives and like it's such a dark humor. But
Yeah, their
and then you're just
screams are awful.
ripping off their heads and like their feet are flying and then you grab their feet and then eat their feet
Yeah,
too.
like, nah, I need that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, at first when I was playing it, I was honestly like grossed out the way that the thing moved and just like the way all the tentacles just moving
Yeah.
around so fast. You're just sitting there like, oh god, I feel disgusting. And then after a while, you're like, you just get into the mindset of I need to grow, and everything in my way is getting in my way of growing to my max form.
Yeah, it's definitely amazing. I mean, like, yeah, it's great. Eating people feels so good
Yes,
after a
it
while. You
does.
just love. Yeah, and then when you get the, I guess you'd call them the commandos or whatever you want to call them, but you can't. They don't give you life, but you like throw them around. It's like a very violent chewing.
Yeah, I didn't notice. I think it was like the first hour. I didn't really notice that you could use your main tendril to whip things around, specifically
Oh
people
yeah,
to kill them. So like a lot of the times I'd run them over, and I thought that if I just ran into a dude, they'd die, and then
yeah.
they would get back up and start fucking me up. So then I finally figured, and it is so satisfying to just grab a dude and then just flick the right stick back and forth and just whip them across the room, just break their body.
Oh my god, I want to tell you so many things,
It's
but I'm not going to
destructive.
ruin them. But there's just like once you start to be able to clear full rooms, it's just like hilarious.
Oh god, yeah, I'm probably right after because I was playing right before we started this to try to beat it before.
Did you
So
get
I'm
the
probably gonna
spikes?
stop this podcast whenever we're done and then go right back and beat it.
Did you get the spikes?
The spikes.
Yeah, I think you
I
get that
don't.
before you get your third growth.
So the thing that I just got was I turn into like worms when I'm in the water,
Oh yeah, yeah. So I know exactly where
which
you
that
are.
is even more disgusting looking.
Yeah.
And not it. Eek.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, it does add some platforming puzzles. Like that's kind of where the platforming puzzles start to come in, is all that water stuff because you have to
Yeah.
raise the water and lower the water. And it was great because it was just enough. Like I never felt like it was a pain in the butt. It was just enough to kind of be interesting. Like they balanced everything so well. I give them super credit for that because once things probably would have got boring, they just ditch them or they move to something else. And
Yeah.
it's always fresh and you're always finding something else to play with, And then also the other thing is like in the beginning, it's a lot of, I wouldn't say, yeah, there's a little bit of Metroidvania stuff where the things you're getting you need to advance
Yeah.
art, but they get to a point where they just start giving you stuff to be brutal. And it's like you just everything after that, you just get it and you're like, yes, it's like more like things that you don't really need, but you can just attack with. Some of them have are also allow you to manipulate the level a bit, but they also function very well as combat, attacks. And I'm like, that's great.
Yeah,
There's no
I
useless.
honestly thought the
Yeah.
game was going to be more Metroidvania because, yeah, I was playing Ori and then I came to this one. And I feel like maybe there was a bigger idea here that it was going to be more Metroidvania where, like, you could revisit old locations and it would move out, which, I mean, it did that a couple times, but it usually was just a per level basis. So
Yeah.
I would be excited for a sequel to kind of take on the full really like an Ori type of platformer where you're going to multiple parts of a research lab and you have to go back when you learn new abilities and maybe like break out your brother biomasses. I don't know.
If done well, if done
Yeah.
well, I definitely like that. I don't know. I mean, it felt good to just be able to go through the game. Like, the cool thing is, like, by the end of the game, you pretty much done everything. Like, it's not, there are things you miss and you can go back and do again, but it's all there. It's all in the
Yeah.
path at which you take. So I liked that. I thought it was really good. But I mean, they stuck to the central hub thing. The central hub thing was more and more the way that the levels were, in the end at least, became formatted, where you just had a central area and then there were paths, and you just took each path, figured it out.
Yeah.
Had like a little puzzle, you figured out what to do to get past it, and then you completed that section, which I think made it. That's why I felt like I never got lost, because it was intuitive. I knew which section I was in. I knew why I went there, and then you could always return to the central hub. And I thought that was a really cool idea, rather than having, like, I feel like Ori, it's good because you're doing what you normally do in these types of games, where you look at the map. If the map's gray, you go there.
Yeah.
And this one doesn't need a map. It's like you don't feel like you ever need to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And I loved the idea of every time you saved, you spread your biomass, and then as time
Yeah.
went on, you spread it more and more, and like parts of the map would just get like completely destroyed because of your biomass, and it would open up shortcuts and stuff. That was fantastic. It made me feel like I was just getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah, yeah, and it was nice because you could go back and save at any time at those and like regain your life, and so it made it fluid, because some of the parts would get really difficult.
There was one problem I had, and maybe this is because I was playing on Xbox. I don't know if you had this issue. Was when I went to a save location, it would save and give me the icon. But then if I didn't press the game or pause the game and press save last checkpoint, it wouldn't technically save if I
Oh,
left the game. So like there was one point where I did a couple things and I was saving normally, and if I died, I'd go back to my last save. But then I shut the game off and came back, and it didn't do that because I didn't press pause and save it. So I don't know if that was a bug or if that's just how they wanted it to. I would have liked it if it just, when I save at one of those spots, it automatically would save it to where if I lost power or something, it would just take me back there. But
yeah,
that also could have been just an
interesting.
Xbox thing. I don't know.
I think that is just an Xbox, because like in on the PC, what you would do is you just go up to one of those things you took over and you'd press the button to go into it, and then it would save.
Hmm.
So yeah, there was no going into the menu or anything like that, which is odd that they would even change that between the systems.
Yeah, again, maybe it wasn't intended, but maybe I'm crazy. I don't know, but it seemed like I was doing things and then they just got reset. I swear, but
Yeah,
only gripe, and even then it wasn't a big deal because the game's not long anyway, so you can really do it in like 1 or 2 sessions. So
yeah, I was surprised. They were completely accurate. I hit exactly 4 hours and then I was done.
oh
But it felt like a decent amount of time. Like I felt like, but you're moving so fast. So, I mean, that's probably why. Like, consider for them, they have to make so much content because of just the speed at which you're moving. It's
yeah,
like,
speaking of that, I was blown away by how much detail they put in that art. I mean, again,
yeah,
it's still pixel art, but it was highly detailed and just so many little things looked phenomenal. And it's for a game that was going that fast, there was no need for it to look that pretty. But I'm so
yeah,
glad it was, because there are sometimes I just like pause. I was like, wow, this is just an amazing environment, especially the underwater parts. They had some great ways of using some lighting to where you just like you couldn't really see yourself in the water, but you could just barely make out like your silhouette. It was just amazing.
yeah. It's really cool. I mean, I really like this game. Please, please, everyone play this because it needs to be recognized. And it just, I was going to say this before. I wrote this down. I'll read to you what I wrote down
Nice.
before we started the thing. I was like, it's like platformers up to this point. Like I feel like they're in three categories. They're either Metroidvania, Meat Boy, or Mario. And like it's Metroidvania and Meat Boy versus Mario. It's like like everyone's against Mario or something, like, because there's just Mario is like its own element of because those types. I don't think there's really any other platformer that is just a straight up platformer that's as good as like Mario games.
I mean, there's like Donkey Kong Country. I don't know where I would put that in those three.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, but that's still like, yeah, I suppose. But I put that under the whole Mario family. Like maybe it's just the Nintendo family because it's the same, to
Yeah.
person. So
No,
it's
I don't know if I definitely agree with those three. And yeah, sometimes it gets a little, I wouldn't say oversaturated, but it sometimes it's hard to find a 2D platformer that like really distinguishes itself as something new, rather than just like a different environment and like a slightly different move mechanic. And this game did that, I think. Probably, I don't think I have enjoyed a new 2D platformer. I mean, there have been, so I've definitely missed some. But I think the last time I enjoyed a 2D platformer this much was Shovel Knight, which was like 2014.
yeah,
Like
and
that
that
was
was
such an amazing game.
that had a lot of interesting things about it that were very different. Like the way that you risked your save points and just a bunch of stuff that they did that and even I mean you could say that the movement's been done before.
Yeah, that
It's the
has
it's the
been
pogo stick from Duck Hunt or
DuckTales.
DuckTales. Yeah,
Yeah, which
DuckTales.
is amazing.
Yeah, and everyone loved that game because it allowed you to maneuver, bounce off enemies and get to places that you wouldn't normally be able to get to, based off of that. But I don't know. What I think they did very well is just like all the DLC that they came out for Shovel Knight, and yeah, I felt the same way. It was just a very unique take on an old style of game of a platformer.
Yeah, and
Because
they definitely like modernized a lot of the game without it making it like it still felt like a game you would play on the Super Nintendo or something, but it also just felt so new. It was just really great. And I mean, apparently that developer is working, Yacht Club. They're working on a new 3D game, and they have not said what it is. But they've also said in the past that they would love to make a game like Shovel Knight 64, which is just like a 3D adaptation of that game, which I'd love to see.
that
I don't
sounds
know if it
dangerous.
would
I mean, if
go
it's
well,
obviously
but
if it's good, it's good. But yeah,
yeah,
that sounds dangerous.
I don't.
um,
Yeah, it could be good, but I don't know how they would translate his jumping, his main pogo stick mechanic into 3D.
well, there's
But
also so many characters now too, so it doesn't necessarily have to be that.
yeah, I mean, I would love if they did somewhat of a 3D platformer approach like what we talked about Sonic Adventure, where you have like all these different point of views from a storyline that you play each character, which technically that's what the game is now. Each character has its similar levels, and a lot of the levels are just the same, but with a little bit of tweaks. And it's just telling the story of Shovel Knight, but from a different perspective, or like explaining where the origin of it was. So
Yeah.
they definitely
So
have built an amazing cast of people that fans love.
yeah, I mean they're concluded though, right? They're not going to make any more DLCs. Is that
Yeah, they
correct?
said that what they said treasure trove, which is what they
Yeah.
consider or Shovel Knight and all of its DLCs is done. Which I mean, they agreed to all of the character DLCs on their Kickstarter, which is why they've been coming out with them. Is they hit their goal and that was what was promised. And then I think they came out with like a fighting game DLC, which was I think this their own little thing that they came up with, which I have not played, but it looked pretty cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean it definitely with all the characters. I don't know how well that would do, but I'm sure it would do okay.
Yeah.
It's just an offshoot game. Let's see, but they also had Smash. Didn't they were in Smash Brothers for a second there, but they weren't a character, but they were like part of the
Oh yeah.
levels. And I thought they were going to be a character, and I was like very surprised that that didn't happen. Because they kind of teased it.
Yes, he's a trophy, I believe.
He's No, he's in the game for a second though, but you can't. He's not a playable character.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like he's just like a trophy that you could get, and he does a thing. Like it's like an item, and then you throw on the ground.
Yeah, maybe that was it. I don't know.
Um,
I just thought that was like, oh, and then they never did anything with it, and I was like, oh, they're not going to bring Shovel Knight
yeah,
to
he's an assist
Smash. Yeah,
trophy. I mean, yeah, that I think everybody did want him to be his own character, and I think that he had a amazing move set that he could have. So, but yeah, he's kind of been making the rounds as a pretty great character in other games. I know he was in what was the game? Oh, Ukulele. Uh,
yeah,
One of the levels had a 3D model of him, and you got to talk with him. And I know he's been in other games, but I love him as a character. I think that if they kind of treat him as their Mario and just take him into these different genres, I think they could do it pretty well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, what is he? He's a bull
I think
I,
he's just a human knight with
with
whole bull
with horns.
horns.
Is
Yeah,
that just his helmet?
yeah, it's just his helmet.
It's just his helmet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think they ever show him take his helmet off. I don't know. I don't know if I want to look up Shovel Knight unmasked. I want to see where that pops up.
Yeah, he's just some like nerdy guy with red hair.
Yeah.
Well, pale. Yeah, no, but I think that's good. I'm glad that there are these moments in which the platforming genre gets pushed forward. Because it does feel like we've seen a lot of it, and there have been phases. Like there was definitely the phase around when Meat Boy was coming out when it was just these impossible platformers, and then you have Celeste and all those. There are all these like torturous, I would call them, torturous platformers where
Yeah.
you try things over and over again until you get it, and like you have to do it perfectly. You have to, maneuver perfectly.
Yeah, which I
Um,
mean, it's a lot of those are just kind of calling back to specifically the NES style of platformers, which they all were that way of like pixel perfect movement, and the game's not meant for you to just play through. You have to die a ton of times to get to the end, like kind of an arcade game. So
but
yeah, it's
it felt like back then, like Ninja Gaiden was like a great example, or Ghosts and Goblins. It was more about the enemies, right? Like maybe the maneuvering of but it feels like a lot of there was a phase right there where it was the levels that were brutal. Like just put
oh
spikes
yeah,
everywhere and just make the levels super brutal. And I don't know, that definitely was a thing for a while. Like there was tons of games coming out, and then it just went out of control. Like I remember um, watching Games Done Quick, and it was like there was a whole section almost of those type of games where they were just these super over the top brutal games I've never even heard of.
yeah.
And yeah, so I'm glad we're getting away from that a bit, because there's definitely a lot more that can be done with the genre that I'd like to see.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I wouldn't say most excited for it, but I really think that the 2D platform genre is just going to benefit hugely from SSDs in consoles. Like every game is going to benefit from instant load times, but I think that 2D worlds are just going to become really fantastic. I mean, Ori already, I don't think has load screens traditionally. You just kind of navigate throughout the world. I mean, there's no really need because they're moving through, but like a game like Carrion, it's moving so fast that they couldn't really afford current like to load every single level without a load screen. And I think on if they were to come out this game or update it in the future with that SSD, you could have that entire map of Carrion, or you never have to load it.
Yeah, that's true. Just super fast.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also, I guess, part of the nostalgia, like with Shovel Knight was a good example where they brought back the whole, like, once you reach the end of the screen, it kind of freezes you and moves the screen to the left like an old NES game was. So, like, that was kind of part of the game's aesthetic. And I don't think that was something that they needed to do. So,
Well, it also made it level digestible. Like, so it
yeah.
was you would beat each level. Like, it felt very much that kind of game. Like, I think it was following, and I guess you could call that the Mario platform, because it started doing that. Just having all these like individual levels where you get to the flag and then it would show the animation afterwards. Um, but I still think Shovel Knight did a lot more with it. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know where people will go with it. I do. I mean, there's a whole subgenre of games that is also for platformers where it's kind of almost like I don't even know how to call this, but open world platformers, like where you have like a town and like you go into the you know what I'm saying, and like it has like central hubs.
Yeah, like, I mean, Shovel Knight, yeah, you had a
You did
town.
have a town in that as well, yeah.
And yeah, you could like buy equipment, and I know later in the Plague Knight DLC, you had like a research place where you could research new abilities and items, and it was like they encourage you to kind of go back. That's something that I was never really. I'm not the biggest fan of, but it's a cool idea. And I mean, I think one of the first games that did that wasn't it Castlevania 2 had
Yeah,
that type of hub world, and it was really. I mean, for compared to Castlevania 1 and 3, it's a weird odd one out, which happened a lot with the NES. But yeah, it had like I swear it had like a day and night cycle, and then a
it
town
did.
that you had. Yeah,
Yeah.
ambitious for the 80s.
No, it was really good. I mean, it was very linear though. It wasn't like you didn't go vertical until you entered into the castle, I think.
Yeah,
And then because everything else was just kind of on one plane, and then you'd go into different towns and stuff. But it was nice because it's just like the lack of an overworld. Oh, what was that game that was the guacamole?
oh, Guacamelee.
Yeah, Guacamole also did that. Also had like a town. I
Yeah,
really
that
liked the way
game.
they,
Oh my
I
god,
really liked the way they
fantastic.
did it. Yeah. So it does work. I mean, these are like somewhat subgenres, but yeah, I like when they cross over, you know, and I think that's with Shovel Knight and other games. But I don't know. I don't know where people are going to go. And I hope
Yeah.
people will take this and kind of use other ideas from other parts of platformer games and kind of make, because it would be really cool in Carrion if because it feels more like you get into different areas and then you defeat those areas. But if there was an ongoing accumulation of humans, right? Like, so they kept regrouping, but they almost had a living entity of themselves. So you're like almost trying to circumvent them. Um,
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Kind of like with Fallout 4, a settlement needs your help, but it's like a part of the research station is like getting uncorrupted because the
yeah,
humans are like starting to burn you down or something, and you got to go back, or you just kind of deal with it and you realize I'm going to lose that part of the map. Yeah, like they could really take this world and make it like a living research lab that you have to try to break out of, or
well,
have
maybe you have
some
to
other
like just
reason.
destroy some research they have that's like combating you, and you can't like fight, and so you have to destroy their ability to make it or something before you can even progress because their enemies are too overwhelming, you know. Or I don't know. I mean, kind of take them down, you know. So it's really
Yeah.
because you against this unrelenting force of humans that is trying to save the town because or the city or whatever, you know, that you're in.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of options there. Hey, if the guys who made this are listening, if you ever need some development help, we're here. So we could be in the credits under idea guys.
Yeah, I don't know if that guy he wasn't an idea guy though,
Oh
but
shit.
he was the designer, so I don't know what the difference is.
He's the one who does the work. The idea guy
Yeah.
just thinks of the idea and he's like, "Dude, you should totally go do that." And he's like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. Yeah, we could be in the credits. Maybe that's what it is. Just a bunch of people doing this, and it's like, oh yeah, you can be in the credits, no problem. I'll
Yeah.
take that. Um, but yeah, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's. Do you think the games are too dark right now? Like, I mean, like, do you think the times are too dark for dark games? Because this is also the Last of Us kind of. This is kind of what we thought the problem was in the beginning was just it was too dark for dark times, and maybe that's the element of this the thing that this thing's running into as well. You know, maybe people don't want to play dark games during pandemic and all this what's going on in the world.
No, I mean I think that's a good point. Yeah, because the reception of Last of Us wasn't fantastic for many reasons, but I think that did play a large role. And if we then like take a look at the game Fall Guys that we just brought up, that game is just super lighthearted and like it does. You just kind of look at it and like how could you be upset by looking at that game and watching it and stuff like that. So and it also encourages like streaming and playing with friends and kind of communicating, which at at these current times is hard to do and you can only really do over remote locations. So that's a pretty good point. Like it feels good to play a game that's super colorful and lighthearted rather than a solo experience where you're just killing people. But I mean,
Yeah.
I personally will take the solo experience of killing people for sure.
Yeah,
Cause
me
it was
too,
fucking refreshing.
man. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe people are just too sensitive, but it does feel like there's kind of and none of these people they can do anything about it because they were developing these games way before they knew what the hell was going to happen.
Yeah,
And I don't think they could push it off until things get better. But It does seem like a little bit of a tragedy. I didn't go through all the Metacritic and read them, and maybe I should have, and maybe it is due to one of the console releases. But I looked at the PC version when I looked at it, and I thought that was pretty flawless in its play through. I mean, I didn't see any bugs, to be honest, when
No.
I played, so I was pretty happy with that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, what other dark games have come out recently?
Trying to think. I don't know. I mean, the when we were talking about the lighthearted ones, something that came to mind was the fact that Animal Crossing dropped like the week that the United States started going into quarantine, and
And
that
people loved
is,
it.
and everyone was playing it. We had congressmen playing it and celebrities playing it. So yeah, that was a really big deal.
And isn't that the funniest thing in the world? Because it's like a game about making your town, right? So it's like you're remaking society.
Yeah, no, I think that's why people liked it. You just sat there and you're like, I can have the world however I want it to
Yeah.
be,
Well, the
and
real
there's no
world
corona in
crumbles.
here. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, maybe that's what people need. They just need a relaxing head break. But I don't know. Because I think that most of the time these type of dark games do really well. I mean, people really love Hotline Miami. What are some other ones that were really, really dark? There was that Russian beat 'em up game that did really well. There was also, and there's been a lot of really dark Switch games. There's that one where you go to parties and you kill everyone. I don't know if you played that
Really?
one. Oh,
I
that game
have
was
not.
amazing. See,
Jesus Christ.
what is the name of the game? I can't think of the name of the game. But anyways, you're basically you start at a party and everyone's like dancing, and you have to go around and you have to kill each person at the party without anyone else seeing. So they'll like go walk off into a certain place, get punched, and you have to kill them, and then you can drag them away. Um, it's awesome. It's a really good game. If you have a chance, I could probably look it up. And let's see.
Yeah, I don't. When it comes to the Switch's game library of games, it for a while there it was rapid. It felt like every week there was like 4 or 5 new games on that platform. So I just started to get lost.
Oh,
So
Party Hard. That's what it is.
yeah, I haven't heard of it.
So it came out in
Who makes it?
2015 or like
Oh wow, that was a while ago.
yeah, it was a little while ago. But I remember this game coming out and I was like, yeah, this is amazing.
Interesting.
Publisher is Tiny Build.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
they make really fun games. I
it's
don't know, I
made
guess published, but
Unity.
yeah.
Yeah, they're just
Okay.
so here, Pinochle Games. I've never even heard of that.
No.
Is developers. So I think this might be the only game they've made. Yes. Yeah, it's the only game they made.
Well, if it
Um,
came out in 2015, they must have ported it to the Switch later because Switch wasn't out by 2015. Switch came out,
oh, you're right. Yeah, so
boy,
The
2017.
Switch is 2018 is the Switch version came out.
Okay.
It came
Okay,
out
so
on
yeah,
Windows, OS X, and Linux in 2015. So
gotta
yeah,
love Unity, right?
yeah, there you go. Um, but yeah, it was just, I mean, there's been a lot of dark games that people have really, really enjoyed, like Binding of Isaac. They're just
Yeah.
usually people just eat up satanic, dark, evil games, like because you just feel weird playing them, and they're kind of sadistically satisfying.
Yeah, well, I mean, like games have always just been a way to like kind of escape the real world. So when a game offers you something where you're like, you're never gonna get this type of like aesthetic or like feel from anything in the real world, yeah, it's definitely appealing, and that's why I'm very surprised that Carrion is not just exploding everywhere because it's something you can quickly get through, and it's like it's unlike I'm never gonna be a biomass monster killing people, but now I can be.
And it was actually a perfect time for it because like there's a kind of a lull in big games, and I feel like after The Last of Us is like this was nice to just play a 4
Yeah,
hour
this
game.
is actually, I
Oh,
mean, this is the first game that I picked up brand like off of a shelf kind of 'cause it's digital, but like I picked up and just played it since The Last of Us because after The Last of Us I was starting to just wind down and play like maybe a multiplayer game with a friend or something, but I don't know what it was about The Last of Us. I loved it, but like it just kind of killed my like motivation to play games for some reason. And this definitely reignited the flame.
Yeah, it was just too long. I mean, we had a whole podcast about this. I just think that it might have just been a slightly too long.
Yeah, it was exhausting, and not in a bad way. It was just
No,
emotionally exhausting, and just yeah, it took a lot of hours out of you. So when you're done with it, you're just like, shit, I need a nap. But
it's
the
definitely a
nap is from
push.
games.
Yeah, it's definitely a push at the end. Like I remember we both said, I think you said that where like you get to a point and you're just pushing to get to the end.
Yeah, which again, it's crazy that they make you feel that way because that's exactly how the game ends: is Ellie pushing herself to just get to the like to finally resolve this conflict. So it's just
Yeah, that's true.
again, the game is fucking phenomenal. They
Yeah,
really
it
make
was
you
just-
feel exactly what they want, and I think Naughty Dog just really kicked ass on that front. But yeah, I'm
yeah,
exhausted.
yeah, same. So this was really nice. It was nice to have a short little game. Actually, I wish there were more games like this because it honestly feels like games feel required to make such a ridiculous amount of content, and that's fine. But I think that there is a level of, I mean, because they'll even sell at low prices, and there's still a ton of content in the game. You know, like you'll buy a game for the 9.99, and it's like still a ton of content, and you're like, wow, this is
Yeah,
so
like
much content.
there's always just been this stigma in the games industry around like game length, and it's like people are like, "Oh, I don't want to spend like a full 60. This game was only 20." But again, $20 for 4 hours. There are a lot of games out there for $10 that have a lot more than 4 hours of content. But I just feel like we need to move past that. Like games don't have to like the price and the amount of game hours you get out of it really should not equate. And if we ever got to that point where it doesn't really matter how long a game is as long as the experience was worth that 20, which I think this experience was worth the full 20.
Yeah,
I'd love to see like game stores sort by hours to beat. Like I would
or
love to be able to say like, oh, I need a game that I just like. I have the next 5 hours or 3 hours. Like, just show me every game that has an average playtime of 3 hours. Which I mean, there's websites like How Long to Beat and stuff that allow you to look at those things. But I would love it to be integrated into a game store.
no, I totally agree. I was gonna say the same thing. Like have a snack section.
Yes.
I
Oh
just
my
need a snack,
god.
man.
Just give me just a quick fix. Come on.
Yeah, because like
And
those games, it's interesting because you get to dive into this world, like, and you're in and out, right? And like you just get a huge. I think it's a different experience. Like, almost last. I mean, it almost sticks with you sometimes. Like this game stuck with me because it was short and because everything was continually being thrown at me, and I just felt it felt great. It felt perfect at its length.
yeah, and I mean, and going back to the like, there's sometimes where I'm looking at a game, especially now that games are going digital. So where a lot of the and there's so many indie games coming out, like you don't get a lot of marketing, so you don't really know what a lot of games are in the digital stores. And I hate finding a game that like kind of looks really cool, and I'm like, oh, I'm interested. And it's like maybe $30, and then it turns out to be like this 60+ hour experience, or like the next Final Fantasy, and I'm like, I just even though the game is fun, I don't want to play it. And I mean, I guess it sucks 'cause I wouldn't have bought it in the first place if I knew that. But
That's not true.
yeah, maybe I would have bought it. I don't know. But yeah, I really do. I wish that we could sort by, and yeah, I think it'd be cool if a store used different terms rather than hours of like, here's a snack, here's like a brunch, here's a full feast, here's a whole like 6 course meal, here's the food for the rest of your life.
And it would also what it would allow to happen is it would allow for separate ratings for those games and separate consideration because I think that that's the
Yeah.
other thing is games that are smaller need to have their own genre or own section, not genre, but own section so they can be rated separately because you can't get, and that's the other thing that maybe why Metacritic sucks is because everything's considered the same, you know, and it's really not the same. I mean, you know, small games, indie games should be put against other indie games, especially in the consideration of the reviewer. Like, it shouldn't be like, oh, well, this isn't, you know, The Last of Us or, you know, that just seems ridiculous. But there's no way for you to know that. Like the way the platform is set up is you're just seeing everything next to each other in reviews, and like when you look at all games.
Yeah, like I totally agree. And that's why I really don't care much for like game review websites or anything like that because yeah, even in like bigger titles that aren't small, it happens all of the time where like someone might be like, "Oh, well, Ocarina of Time is the best game of all time because that's the highest rating." But like you can't compare that with Doom Eternal. It's just like a completely different experience and like just the numbers really don't equate.
Yeah,
Um and the same thing like you might rate a game really high because it did something really well that it was trying to do, but it something I've noticed in the past with sometimes a game gets a bad review because it's something that it or it's not something people thought it was, or like they give it a bad rep because it's like, oh well, it doesn't have that strong of a narrative, even though the game's point was not to have a narrative, it was just all about the gameplay. And I'm seeing a couple of these things
That
with
Destiny.
oh god, it's a whole nother thing. But I'm
Yeah.
seeing this with some of the lower scores that this got, was like people saying, well, the game is, it doesn't really like reach its full potential because it's short, or the game's narrative is lacking. And I'm like, well, that's really not the point right here. The game doesn't have a lot of replayability, which, does the game have to have those things? I don't think so, because it
No.
nails what it did so well. So like for what it was trying to do, it's absolutely amazing, flawless execution.
Well, I just don't. I'm glad that I didn't have to go back. Actually, there's a point where they kind of hint at the point that you can go back and do stuff in the game, and I was like, oh man, I must have missed stuff. And then when I got to the end, I didn't miss anything. I was like, great, this is perfect. I'm done. I'm happy to be done. This was a snack. It was.
Yeah,
I don't
know,
need it to be
such
anything
a
more.
good snack.
Yeah. So, and yeah, it's I mean, there's so many games like that. Like I used to love the Call of Duty games for that same reason. The first, not the online play, which everyone plays, but just the single player game campaign, because they were so short and like it felt snack worthy, but they were so well done. Like you'd play through them and just be blown away, but you could do it in a sitting.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that isn't a thing. And it can be at all levels of competency. Like AAA games can do this as well. Like, and I just don't see why every game needs to be giant.
Yeah, like why does the person want to keep replaying a game? Like I really love those in and out games where once you play it again, you just never, it's not that you never want to play it again, but you're just like, oh, I got everything I felt like I needed out of it. It's just something about it is way more satisfying to play a game. And that was with Far Cry 3 was like that game that did that to me, where I loved the game so much that I did everything, and then like to this day I have never wanted to go back, and that was not a bad thing. I still regard that as one of my favorite games of all time, because it was just a great experience one way through, and then I'm done with it.
Yeah, well, because I think that with Far Cry 3, they pulled you through with the story, and like,
Yeah.
once the story was concluded, yeah, maybe you missed some stuff, but you knew it happened, and you felt like you concluded the world, right? Like you saved the world, whatever that they created, in a way, not really, but
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's oh man, I thought I lost myself for a second there.
That's fine. I think a game that does that very well, of still it staying like a big game because the expectations are that it is a big game, but giving you a great little, not necessarily a snack, but a good meal, which is the new God of War, because the game has a very linear story, and it's very like get to point A to point B, and it gives you that, but then you can optionally take on a ton of other stuff after the game or during the game. But if you are that person who just wants to go through it, again, there are people that sometimes you do feel like you're missing out, so there is that issue. But I think that they really handled it very well, with the game feeling like it could be really big and has replay value, but for people who don't have that much time, they can sit through the game and have a great experience.
Yeah. No, I actually really did enjoy that game. And I liked it because it was linear. But it wasn't really about like, putting so much content in there. I mean, those games are this era's version of beat 'em ups. So,
Yeah.
and it's like, you're just going through the waves of enemies, and each one has its own unique challenge and capability to get through, but yeah, I mean, it definitely, I hope that they realize this, because it's really I think a lot of really cool things could be done, especially by AAA developers. Like, I think if they were to consider smaller games and just, I mean, even games within games, and this also plays well for, this usually happens in the realm when there's multiplayer, so they'll allow for a smaller game to be made because the multiplayer is the most, developed part of the game. But
Yes.
like even Halo, I mean, I guess their campaigns aren't that long. I mean, how long is a Halo campaign?
Yeah, it's the normal, like, I want to say like between 8 and 10 hours on the norm.
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
normal first-person campaign.
Yeah. So maybe that's pretty good for shooters. What was Call of Duties were shorter though, weren't they? Like I just felt
Yeah,
like Call of
Duties
Duties
were between like 6 and 8.
were 6 and 8. Yeah.
Yeah. Which again, they never felt too long or too short. They felt just right. Like they had the pacing down, story was great, the action was just enough to keep me going, but it had some moments for me to calm down. I really enjoyed I love the package that Call of Duty used to offer. I mean, they still do, but I just feel like it's not as good. of just like, here's a campaign, you can play it in, yeah, about a sitting if you're really into it, but you can do it in like one or two, and then if you want replayability, go play the multiplayer. Like the
Yeah.
campaign doesn't have to, you don't have to go through the campaign a billion times to get the game's full thing. You can just get that one-time experience. I would say that Modern Warfare, the new one from last year, did that very well, I think. Campaign was very one and doney, but in a good way, and then the multiplayer was fun.
Well, I think the thing that makes replayability is what we talked about last week was or 2 weeks ago, Halo. With Halo, just being able to unlock different parts of the game to play it in a different way, with the skulls and everything like that, and I hope they do similar things where it really comes in, to the replayability comes to playing it different. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily that you need to open up more parts of the map or have a lot of levels or have a second playthrough or prestige. I don't know how you would prestige in a single player game, but maybe they'd figure out a way. Um, but yeah, I think that it's really cool that it's like it's a choice that you get to make, and I think what comes along with that with Halo is, and this is why I'm so excited for couch co-op, was the couch co-op because as you said before, being able to put on those skulls and being able to have a guy sitting next to you or a friend buddy sitting next to you and being able to try this ridiculously impossible scenario
Yeah.
is awesome. It's just like, and that's where replayability, and like you can play that 100 times because it's almost like, the game's challenging you to be the best player you can.
Yeah, it's really it kind of, I just sit here sometimes and it blows my mind that Halo, you can play it over and over again even though the story like doesn't change or anything, but just something about, yeah, and I think it's what you're mentioning of not only the couch co-op but the being able to edit how the game plays with skulls and stuff, and just how sandboxy the game is. Like, yeah, you can just take on an encounter in so many ways. And I think one of the most overlooked features of the Master Chief Collection is their playlists section, where you can play pre-built lists of missions that 343 thought of like, hey, why don't you and a friend go through and play every tank mission through all the Halo games, and it'll just load you into Halo 1 and then out of it and then back into Halo 2 for that tank mission.
Yeah.
Or like that is such a good idea of like, yeah, I just want to drive a Warthog for the next 8 hours of my life, and then they're like, well, there you go.
Yeah. Well, the only problem I had with the Master Chief Collection was that they did the slow rollout for the games, like for at least for Reach. I think wasn't Reach like a slow rollout. So you didn't have everything on. You didn't have all the games when you first got it.
Reach?
Was it? I think it was. Yeah, it was either 4 or Reach, or that one of the games wasn't part of the package when it first released. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, though.
Oh, the MCC package. Yeah, Reach.
Yes.
Sorry,
It was
I see what you're
yeah.
saying. I thought you meant the
Okay.
game as a whole. I'm like, what the hell are you?
No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no, no, no,
Reach.
no.
Reach
Yeah,
was
so
not there at the launch.
and I think that of course, there was a lot of things that happened on the launch that soured people, but I think that was souring too because it just was supposed to be the history of Halo. Not to gripe because it's still amazing, and I think it is an amazing game right now. And I think it's influenced a lot of what's going on with the new game and like what people like and how they play it. I don't know. So we'll see, but yeah, I do like that. I do like the ability to play the game like you want it. And like the more freedom you give it, the more sandboxy. Like we were talking about that with the Forge, like really allowing Forge to be something that allows you to manipulate like weapons and different things. Like if they really give it up to the user and just allow user generated content all over the place, it's gonna be so good. That's what I want.
Yeah.
That's what I want. So bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's probably a good place to end it. We're just about at 7 o'clock, so.
Yeah. All right. Well,
everybody listening, go play Carrion. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely a good snack.
If you're hungry.
You're hungry. All right. Well, I guess we'll see you next week and same time, same place. All right. Bye.
All right. That was a damn good episode, dude.